And I think you know why we're here, but we're here because you guys are evolutionary leaders. And it's good to see you. It's good to see all you guys. But you guys are the brain trust of what's walking forward. And Zoe's vision is to really get you guys all together in the dinner table talking about the future and our best future at that. So we really encourage you guys tonight to intermix outside of your friend groups and introduce yourself to everyone, okay? So that you use this opportunity to get to know each other, exchange phone numbers, and continue the conversation. The idea is that we're going to do this every month as a chance to bring in speakers to talk about AI, talk about regenerative agriculture, talk about all these things that are coming very quickly with, with exponential change, and we can get behind them and really talk about them. So I'm a statistics junkie, and I would love to have a raise of hands for those that have found your passion, your mission, or your calling. That makes me so happy.
Makes us happy too.
Well, this is why you guys are leaders of our best future, because that is the secret ingredient. And Jeremiah Johnson, who is our chef, who I don't see back there right now, maybe Adam can go find him, because I wanted, oh, where is he? Oh, he's changing. Okay, well, that's okay. So he has found his passion, and his passion is to do plant-based cuisine, right? So vegan cuisine, organic cuisine. And he also, we do have chicken tonight, but yeah, oh, great. Gigi's here, one of our guests of honor. So it's his passion, and he's just now with this event launching his new career as a private chef, as an event chef, as a caterer. So we encourage you guys to pass his number around. It's on the tables and everything like that. So he's so great, gracious. He spent hours and hours and hours and hours preparing this meal for you tonight. He also has some incredible helpers. Hans, Glacier, and Chris are also going to be back there in the kitchen holding it down. So all the produce that you're going to eat tonight is from the Sedona Greenhouse Project. It is where they're growing in teaching people how to grow gardens in their backyard. So if you've never done it, it's a fun to do it with, because you can be like, what's happening to my tomatoes? And you can reach out and do it together, right? And now's the time for planting. So we really encourage you to do that. There's the chef. Okay. So I also want to thank Aaron and Lindsay for helping with all the flowers, all the table settings. I mean, they have been here for hours as well to put their hearts into. So some of you guys know Jim Reich, he of Wine Tours of Sedona. Have you guys ever been on his tour? Who's been on his tour? Okay, just a few people. Okay, so his tours are amazing. He has eight wineries, 18 wine tasting things, and he also has 2 organic chocolate tours. And he donated $700 of wine to us tonight. Wow. Thank him. And I encourage you to spend the afternoon in the wineries around here. He also has 5 acres that he's selling. So right outside of Cornville in Page Springs for $777,000. It's 5 acres. He was going to put an organic farm, a collective community there. But we also have that QR code around. So please use your consciousness to support Jim in selling that land to someone that would be a great fit, right? So it's right out of town. You can do an orchard on it. You can do a community on it. I also want to thank JJ and Desiree from the Academy of Future Science. They have brought all the tables and all the chairs for tonight, because to rent them was so expensive. So that's a huge thing that they've done. They are incredible. Their Cave of Enoch book has been translated into a ton of different languages, and they have scientists and scholars around the world in countries all over the world thinking about our best future. So congratulations and thank you so much to John as well for helping out with that. I just have a few more people to thank here. Sedona, Universal Ultimate Light Mission, Sedona Quantum Consciousness, Verde Valley, also donated little things here, you know, so it's really taken a village to do this tonight, and we appreciate them so much. So a lot of you know I'm from LightNet. I want you to raise your hand 2 more times. Number one, do you currently want to do something that you think is impossible or really challenging or overwhelming? Okay. And I also want to raise you to raise your hand if you know someone or affected by someone who's been addicted to something. Okay, that's pretty cool. So we almost had all the hands. So LightNet helps people do impossible things by tracking 100 people who did that impossible thing, whatever it is. Coffee's setting the bar very far out. She's doing a levitation lab, and she's already interviewed 4 people for her statistics of 100 people. So make sure to get to know her tonight. She came all the way up from Prescott to be with us, and she's a bundle of fun. So we also have Alan Steinfeld, who teaches remote viewing.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi.
He's part of the core team at LightNet,
Yes.
and he can teach you how to see things by just closing your eyes anywhere in the world in 2 or 3 classes. We also have Ashley, who's helping children and their special abilities and their parents. And we have Adam, who's been also working all day to make this happen. And he's going to be teaching waking, lucid dreaming, all happening in June. So Astara is hosting a potluck tomorrow. And I just really want to recognize her because every Sunday at a different person's house, she brings the entire community together with speakers, sound baths, all that stuff. And tomorrow's happening here. So thank you so much, Astara, for everything you do for our community. We're going to be moving the spoon bending parties here. So on the 26th, there's spoon bending. There's stuff around that you can find out where that is. We're also doing miracle healing tomorrow at 4 o'clock, instant healing, 15 minutes, your biggest block's gone. So again, and then we at LightNet love to like look at the newest things. And one of that is technology. And Lori was so sweet to bring its Centropics over. So you guys are bathed not only in a clearing frequency of all your cell phones and all the e-smog is clearing it, clear slate. Then she's put waterfalls from Hawaii and other concentration frequencies in that gold-plated box. And Isaac Mars, who's written Unity Theory, is in the master bedroom waiting to put you on the cloud. So cloud is a healing mat. You can go in for 15 minutes tonight and enjoy that. And I'm wearing the bubble, which is taking me into Schumann residence. So ask Lori, myself, or Isaac about this incredible technology. So Zoe, you are the true guest of honor tonight because this is your dream and your vision come to life. And I want to thank you for putting this all together. It's incredible. And all the conversations that you're starting tonight are going to echo into the future. Thank you so much, Frank Jacobs and Tanya, for also donating your time tonight. I know you make the big bucks at these speaking engagements, so we really appreciate. They're leaving to go back to Europe soon, so we're really honored to have you come here tonight with us. We really appreciate it. And Gail is a new futurist buddy of mine, and I'm just so grateful to know you. But I'll hand it over to Zoe. Thank you, guys. Bathrooms are here, right there. And sorry about the heat. We do have the air conditioning blasting right now. Yeah, Coffee, can you close that door? Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you, Zinga. Thank you for I'll stand so you all can see me. I'm Zoey Wind. Thank you for donating the space, your home, letting us, welcoming us here, and all the incredible work you do. I'm so excited. My notes so I don't forget things. At the end, Jeremiah, our chef, will be announcing all the food, so don't jump out of your chairs because he'll jump on the mic and let us know what's going on. in case you have any questions, and there will also be signs so that you will know what's going on with the food. Are there enough chairs?
Yeah,
You have
there's a
enough
couple of
chairs?
empty
Okay.
ones.
Yes.
Okay, if there aren't, Adam will be on it, just, direct people to him, point. And yeah, so I am Zoey Wind. I'm an astrologer. New Earth astrology is what I call the style I'm doing and teaching. It's just based on a bunch of amazing teachers who've shared their vision and wisdom with me. And I have a degree from Northern Arizona. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Am I turning it up? Okay. I went to college in Flagstaff at Northern Arizona University, and I studied environmental studies there with a focus in biocultural diversity, regenerative agriculture, regenerative communities. And I was so passionate about building this new world and saving the world. And then I left there and was like, I'm pretty sure my degree is in humans are parasites and we're all screwed. It was so depressing, really, really hard. And I just went straight to working the land and living in communities and trying to live as indigenously as this girl from the East Coast could, and grow my own food and learn how to feed myself. And then was like, okay, now we're going to start the communities and the revolution's going to start. And so I started living in different various communities, only to find that we just really didn't even know how to have conversations. Like, we didn't really know how to have hard conversations. We needed healing in order to even be able to relate, because so many of us come from so many wounded places from this world that we all came into, and all the inherited trauma that I'm sure we're all well aware of in this room. And I went in to heal. I thought I was going to be a doctor, a naturopathic doctor, Chinese doctor, and then I met an astrologer, and that went out the window. My parents were terrified. And really, you're a what? And I moved into healing. I kept trying to move more into healing, but I had my own healing to do in order to be initiated into that, which is something anyone who's a healer probably understands. And I had kind of given up on intentional communities. They all kept falling apart in different ways, and I just didn't really know what to do in the pandemic. And I was like, somebody like hired me to come out and start like my dream community, and it just still didn't work, And so then I almost died of mold poisoning, and ended up healing myself with theta healing, which is a form of quantum healing, using the subconscious, reprogramming our subconscious mind. It's also very spiritual, so we're really channeling and clearing and balancing, and it's energy healing. And I think every theta healer kind of does it a little different. And that really anchored in the power of quantum reality. I healed in 45 days, what doctors said would take me 1 to 3 years to even remotely feel normal towards, So I was a firm believer. And yet there was miracles I couldn't work anymore. I still couldn't work, I worked some, like I'm sure many of us here have. And then in early 2021, I lost my father in the COVID hospital crisis. And it was like, right when I thought I had my win, I made it through my 5-year dark night of the soul. And this happened, and I was just, I didn't know if I could be here anymore. I didn't know if I could participate anymore. And so I found my way after a few months in Mexico, grieving and going out to parties so I could distract myself. I found myself basically living like drawn here to Sedona, which was like such a sacred, special place to me from 5 years in Flagstaff. And I just lived like a sadhu in the desert for like 6 months, and just didn't know how to I just didn't know how to participate. And this community held me, healed me, showed me that people were not so broken that we are just going to completely abandon each other to die. It was like, that was where I was at. And this vision for this space had come through years before, like many times they do. And, all my little insecurities and fears, and I'm not good enough, and who am I, and no one will show up. And it just didn't matter anymore. It was very clear that this was really the only thing left to do. And it doesn't really matter what I might be afraid of, because there's a lot more out there that is way worth us anchoring something new, something different for the collective. And I don't think it could be a more perfect place of incredible minds. Many of us probably know of the ley lines here leading out to the world, the rest of the world. And we're in this crystal castle, and I envision pyramids out here one day. And I know that everybody here has a vision. Everybody here has a piece of the vision of the new earth. No one person will have it. No one person will be the president of the new earth. That is not how it's going to work. I don't really know how it's going to work. But we know how it's going to work. Together we can create how it's going to work, and we really need that. And so I had this vision of creating these salons based on salons that were started, actually, I learned originally in Italy, which is interesting. That's my own lineage. And in France, they really took off, and they were mostly held in aristocratic and well-educated women's homes. But I didn't even realize until I researched deeper. And here we have this incredible, highly educated woman. And it happened. So that was really just like a cool, like in retrospect, I just knew them as a place to come together, and creatives and visionaries to talk about and gather and talk about the next step for our evolution, for one another, for where we're going and what are the possibilities. So that's a little bit about the birth of this space. My father was a really incredibly powerful human being. He could fill, 10 of these rooms with his energy. And he is, who I feel with me, giving me the strength and guiding me every day. And it's really, he'd be so proud, he always was with everything I did. So thank you, Dad. I love you. I miss you. And really just want to honor and anchor this space in the highest vision, the highest timelines available that we can draw down, anchoring of pure unconditional love for all beings without exception. May this space serve the highest and best in every way that we can, in all the little ways and all the big ways. And I'm super excited about our topic. We have 4 amazing speakers for you this evening. To my right is Frank Jacob. Frank Jacob is an international award-winning filmmaker, presenter, popular talk show host, or guest, visual artist, musician, and composer. I want to hear your music. And he's teamed up with US motion picture production company Screen Addiction. The producer here is Tanya Maiden-Ford, one of our other speakers. And their recent films explore the frontiers of consciousness-raising subjects in films like The Solar Revolution, speaking about how the solar codes influence our consciousness and beyond. The Klaus Dona Chronicles and Packing for Mars, about us becoming an off-world species, which is in some ways already happening. And Frank has co-directed and produced the series Timeless, a first of its kind German format series exploring the world of paranormal for the US and GAIA. So give a warm welcome to Frank Jacob. And Tanya Maiden-Ford right here in the beautiful Tanya is the founder and director of Screen Addiction LLC, a cutting-edge motion picture company developing feature films and concepts related to the multidimensional nature of humanity's emergence in the 21st century. She has over 400 credits to her name and has produced films on many scales, including Hollywood studio pictures and independent feature films and projects that have been distributed by major motion picture companies around the world. And has won many awards. I could just go on. Gil Agnew here in the center has, I don't know if the problem before Gil is a futurist, archivist, and design scientist. He is founder of New Energy, an organization to empower conscious evolution, and co-founder of Whole World View, with the vision to transform our global emergency into the emergence of our conscious evolution, in harmony with Gaian and cosmic principles, through expanding our new sphere and accelerating the ascension of human consciousness. And he has devoted his life to understanding the relationship between consciousness and meaning, and brings that wisdom back to the world when it needs it most. So we are so grateful for your wisdom tonight. This is literally an order that I have them printed now. And Zenka Caro, our gracious host, is a futurist, software architect, and founder of LightNet. She is a pioneer in mind over matter consciousness research, including spoon bending and electromagnetic radio ham contact with ETs and NHI, and biohacking with frontier technology. Cara is an expert in NFTs, wearables, blockchain, decentralized tech, and crypto, and was an early pioneer in augmented reality technology, of which you'll see some of her art on the walls displaying. Her AR artwork has been displayed in Sotheby's and is in permanent collection of Delta at JFK and the Museum of Innovation, and she has been a keynote speaker on the TEDx stage and beyond. So grateful to have your genius here. So the quantum age. So we like to begin by defining terms, right? So what do we mean by the quantum, right? And so this was discovered by scientists as when we started to look at very, very small microcosmic nature of particles, the smallest particles that they could study. They found that things were operating under different principles than what they seemed to be operating on, and at least by the parameters that modern science is using to measure larger scale phenomenon in the universe. And as a result, of course, this illuminated them that, and to which many ancient spiritual traditions already knew, that we can use these same principles in the world to affect reality, right? So like, for example, they would be trying to predict where an electron, because electrons essentially flip in and out, right? And these little clouds around the nucleus of an atom, they're not going in that nice little circle like we're taught in science class in high school, although that's convenient. And they'd be like, okay, well, we wonder where they're going to show up next. You know, well, we'll look here. And then the probability of it showing up there was like exponentially higher. And so, and then they would find that where they looked was where it showed. And the more they did that, the more it showed there. And they started to realize, well, what's doing? Oh, it's our consciousness, right? Our mind is so, and this is not new information to anyone here. And it's certainly ancient information from around the globe from our wisdom keepers. But this is really awakening in the collective. And so what we're seeing now is that people are becoming aware that we shift our reality with our consciousness on a mass scale. And so what are the implications of this, right? Along with this comes also topics like parallel realities, multidimensional realities, multiple timelines existing simultaneously alongside each other, and how this is a part of how many of us, and here people here that are going to be speaking tonight, are working with collapsing timelines and affecting reality, affecting the quantum through this higher understanding. And I love that, you know, you can go into any ancient text and you'll find them talking about it, but we just thought it was metaphor or it was poetic, you know. But now the more that we're understanding it in our own language, we can decode some of that more readily and more actively. And so I gave my definition of quantum and multidimensionality and what this nature of being in the quantum age is for me, but I'm really curious what it means to each of you and what the most exciting implications of that may be for you. And Zinga, you can start, you can pass it to anyone who wants to begin.
Okay, so I think we never realize how powerful our consciousness really is. I think there's a shift in the collective going, oh, the world is happening to me, rather than my consciousness is somehow building the reality around us all. And so I think there's so many questions that quantum physics brings into question, and it literally breaks my brain. Like, to think like there's multiple versions of me and my best version is there. How do I get there? You know what I mean? So we'll get into the discussion more, but these are some of the questions that inspire me to think about this.
The way we perceive the world is our worldview, right? And we understand that you have so much information that comes in, it's overwhelming. And so your cultural filters and individual characteristic filters choose what you see. And I think it's just this, there's a new emergent cosmology, which is what we're all trying to wrap our heads around to articulate and share and give comfort to others. So for me, it's very much part of the evolution of the cosmology, the evolution of the way our civilization has seen the world, the universe, and our place in it. And we're in a huge shift of a new cosmology, and we're all trying the hardest we can, grabbing straws to put it together. And if you look back over time, I think it's what's fascinating to see how that cosmology has evolved over time from the people who came before us.
Wow, so that's a big topic. I mean, I can only derive what I know from my own experiences, and I started very young with some pretty wild experiences, but with the television and the movie background, and then venturing over into consciousness films, I get to meet the greatest minds on the planet. And we actually have some of the greatest minds here right in the room. I'm so honored to be on this couch, but really, there are so many here in the audience that could be sitting here. Just the topics that I've been able to dive into prior to Frank, and then all of the films we've done together, teleportation, time travel, learning about the electromagnetic field of the earth and how we're changing from within our own DNA, and combining that with our own experiences. It's magical. And learning about crazy technologies, which I definitely want to share a few of them tonight, because we learn about ourselves and we learn about the world we're in and where we're going, and the higher realms and the higher spheres. So I hope that we go into those corners tonight, because it's some really cool topics to explore.
I started my life as an artist, more in a professional or adult life, because I think that was the way that I tuned into other dimensions and other realities. I would see and hear things. And it wasn't until really much later that I began to kind of try to formulate those things. And some of the formulation came through reading some very interesting books by some very advanced authors. And this is before quantum physics was really kind of the household word it's become now. So it was, it was about the construct of reality and the energy of the reality and the fractal nature of everything. And it was then, the course of the trajectory that my life took me that I eventually connected with certain, like Tanya's already mentioned. We've been able to sit at the foot of the masters while we make these films, and we get to ask them questions to explain some of the spiritual concepts, which I think is really cool, because the people that we've been making films with are scientists. So they want to always try to get a scientific grasp of some of the spiritual concepts. And I think I can remember that Tanya and I were up in Sudbury, Ontario. We drove like 6 hours after flying 18 to Toronto to drive up to talk to Professor Dr. Michael Persinger, who's a world-renowned neuroscientist. And I remember, because I had started my life as an artist and had gotten into spiritual concepts like the Akasha records and things like that, it was always kind of nebulous, like, okay, where is it? How do you use it? And I think, for example, that Akasha as a topic, Michael Persinger was somebody who gave us, I think, one of the best definitions that we'd ever really heard of what the Akasha records is. And it had to do with the field, the magnetic field around our planet. And it became very, very clear that our lives are not, and our bodies or our consciousness doesn't just end with our skin, but it extends outward all the way to the, well, you could almost say to the extremes of the entire cosmos. But there's a scientific foundation to that. And there's people that are converting that knowledge into technologies or just information that helps people to utilize that reality, because I think a lot of it is wasted energy if you don't know about it. And I think Tanya and I really enjoy working with certain people that help to formulate it so that you go, wow, so that's really out there right now. So I could actually utilize that to visualize my reality and to draw the probabilities of this timeline into the world. That's how it works. I get it. It's not just some woo-woo concept.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of the biggest milestone for us.
Amazing. So how does this technology work? Is this technology accessing the Akasha in a way that makes it visible? Like you can read? I want to see the books in the library.
It has a lot to do with frequency and resonance. Those are kind of the two critical elements to it. Our cells spin at a certain, you mentioned electrons, and we talked about wave to particle. And so it has to do with frequency. And you learn that the higher, that thoughts have specific frequencies, and that states of consciousness have specific frequencies. And the other element is resonance. So you go into resonance with specific frequencies as well. And when that happens, resonance is the key. The perfect example is that famous example of an opera singing to a crystal glass. And when they reach the same frequency, they go into resonance, and the resonance creates, or we've seen those crazy pictures of bridges that are kind of like, whoa, when an earthquake happens, right? Well, they go into resonance with that frequency, and then they dissolve matter, or they change matter. Matter changes. And so emotions are also frequency. And you realize that the world around us is, when you realize that all of it has to do with the frequencies that we're tuned into, and that our emotions actually create form matter because of going into resonance, that we have way more power creating our matter, or what matters, our reality, than we even realize. And that the system out there, you can't really look at it as evil or negative. It's just that if you keep stuck in kind of a regimented, structured, limited way of thinking, you don't get to experience your ability as a creator being. Because if that's not being enforced or taught or opened to you, then you will believe that you're limited by that reality that you've manifested around you up to that point. And so that's how you, I think, can make it work for you.
Yes.
That makes any sense?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Let's hear about some more technologies that are ways that we shift with resonance.
So actually, Desiree asked the speakers to stand up because we don't have an elevation here. So as we go, we'll be standing. Okay. So the question is about frequency. Well, this one is putting me in 7.83, which is Schumann, which is the natural law. So the natural world, the whole globe, right? It may be changing, but we know that walking in nature heals you. So it actually is healing. It's because you're starting to resonate with the earth, and therefore heal. I believe that, so when I first started understanding quantum physics, it was with the super radiance effect. And the super radiance effect was this idea that at some point, we as a collective trip ourselves into magic, where we're going like, what today is gonna bring? And we're like kids going, oh, synchronicity, or like, how could this be? And like, we get all excited and we throw away, like Frank is saying, we don't think that what we've created around us is permanent. We're like, oh, what's the next, thing? Because that really is where we want to be, right? To see how high we can go up. And I've come to think that I have jumped in my frequency 3 times in my life so severely that I barely recognized my life. The first time I thought I died. I got Reiki and I thought I died. Like everybody in my entire world, my husband, my kid, all stuff was so different and so better that I was like, hey, And it happened after healing and a plant medicine journey. And I was like, oh my gosh, my friend just got $200,000 from business and Mark got this new space. And it was just like everything was better. So maybe we have these little deaths that happen where we're not reincarnating as a turtle, but we're reincarnating as our higher self. And it means a lot of times it's gradual, but sometimes we leap. And that's quantum also teaches us that we can leap. Like it's like a record skipping. It's not like gradual. It's like we could leap. We could leap.
And I'm not a physicist, I'm actually a technologist, but I like simplicity. And I love Carol Burnett describing it, and her daughter says, I woke up every day and say, I'm going to be in love with my life today. And that's when you shift those parameters of your perspective, your worldview, and you engage it from the love frequency. We know, of course, that it comes more electromagnetic sensors, more of your connection is your heart. The other thing is I understand that connection with the quantum field we are embedded in is not just through the heart, it's also through the DNA. But there's a reason you have 1 trillion DNA. We think that 80% are dumb, of course they're dumb, we just haven't figured it out. And I'm sure there's others in here who would know more, but my understanding is our DNAs are generally operating at 30%. And if you can move up to 35, and so I do a lot of my visualization trying to activate the mitochondrial DNA, to activate more of that DNA, which then, it signals to your stem cells to print their perfect blueprint, which causes healing. So I'm sure others, that's the way I'm trying to simplify it.
Wow.
Can you still see me if I kind of sit up here? Or you want me to stand? Stand? Okay. Wow, where do I start? Changing and jumping. We really not only can change our present and our future, we can change our past. And this whole idea of timelines. Frank gives presentations about the looking glass technology. Then you have the chronovisor. When we shot Packing for Mars, we were diving down all these subjects of teleportation and time travel. And the chronovisor, does anyone know about the chronovisor? I know we've talked about it a lot. I'll just sort of briefly go through it. Yeah. So the chronovisor is like a looking device, and it was used in Project Pegasus. It was featured in our film Packing for Mars. And they could actually go back and peer into the timelines. And they could not only peer in, they could actually record. Now, it was kind of weird because when they would record, and I'm a filmmaker, so this is really fascinating, but when they would peer in and record, they could record, speaking of acacia, they could actually record like the acacia, like an echo. And the film was on microfilm, microfiche, and it was only black and white. I don't know why they couldn't get color, but they could actually photograph this and film this. That means we're all leaving a living record, and that record is changing all the time. Now, okay, so I'm going to get into some technology. I don't want to talk about it. But we were featuring our films, Solar Revolution and Packing for Mars, at Nexus, which is in Australia. And I love Duncan Rhodes. And we got into long conversations at night after our film screenings. And Nexus, many years ago, released some interesting data on a project called the Chani Project, CHANI, you can look it up. And it was an underground hadron collider in Africa. What's interesting about, and this was in 1994, what's really interesting is that a group of scientists basically opened a portal, and they did it with a computer-aided device. So there wasn't like a channeler with a human psyche in the middle. They actually used a computer. It was a computer-aided device that they opened this portal and they made contact with an entity. Now, this entity was in a parallel reality, a parallel world. And they kept that portal open for 5 years. Like, not a lot of people have heard about this. It's crazy. But they actually, over the course of these 5 years, from 1994 to 1999, these scientists asked over 20,000 questions about the nature of reality. This is an entity existing in a parallel reality, a parallel world, another dimension. It's just like Jodie Foster in Contact, right? Looking Glass, I get excited about this stuff. Anyway, what was the most interesting thing was the information that came through about time and about humanity. And they shared the fact that time is elastic. It bends. It actually moves in a circle. And you can time jump. And multiple beings, other beings also are jumping between these timelines, and timelines collide. And a very interesting thing too is this is 20 years ago. They said that they could see us, but we couldn't see them in this parallel world. Now, one other thing that was very fascinating was what came up about the moon. And, you know, I've done films about the moon prior to meeting Frank. With Jose Escamilla, who was genius, we did Moon Rising, UFO Greatest Story Ever Denied, Celestial. We were showing all these things that, all this latest and greatest smudged images and crazy things about the moon. But this parallel reality, this entity shared about our moon, they didn't understand. So not only did we ask like 20,000 questions, but the entity actually asked questions of us, and they didn't understand. One of the primary questions was they did not understand why we hadn't neutralized our moon. But their elders had done that long ago because apparently it changes the perception of humanity on time. And when they neutralized their moon, I don't know, did they remove it? Did they destroy it? But and they were advised to neutralize their moon by the interplanetary beings from where they were at. But once they did this, there were some very interesting changes. They could see in different light spectrums. The children born after the moon could breathe for hours underwater. They could hold their breath and breathe hours underwater. Their telepathic abilities became like, we wouldn't need computers and phones anymore. The telepathic ability were there, and they started communicating with their interplanetary beings. Like it was just like open communication at that point. So the telepathic storms, hot, cold weather, everything became balanced on the planet. It was just interesting information that came through how our reality can change and how they are literally using these timelines, and the fact that if time is spherical and if it bends and if timelines collide and we have other variations of ourselves on other timelines, then we're doing everything all at once, and it's all changing forward, backwards. And so every day is a moment to live a new day and create magic, because all we have is right now. So yeah.
Thank you. Oh, I have so many questions. Parallel selves. Has anyone here ever changed your past? Yeah.
I'll go later.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I've definitely changed my past. I mean, just even simply by changing the story about my past, like that, like, because I work a lot with my stories, right? How do I tell the story? And then I'll change it just a little bit each time, you know, away from victimhood, away from tragedy, towards being the hero, towards being made more epic by this experience, or finding new strength. So that's one of the ways that I really personally slowly tweak my reality to make jumps. I think I've made some major jumps. Like I think this last year was probably the biggest major jump in my timeline. And I just did that by being out on the land, and just like I was so far away from everything else. No one could box me in. No one could. Sometimes I'm very sensitive to how people see me or what they think of me, or the old me was, you know? And so it was like I needed that time in isolation to be just with the rocks and the spirits and the ancient shamans that would fly in and give me messages, you know, and the ships and the stars, and then being like, yeah, you're that. Yeah, you can be that. You're already that. You've already been that. You're already doing it. And I'm like, I'm doing it. I am it, you know, and then all of a sudden I am living it. So those are some of the very real ways that I've applied these things. Like I have a million questions, like how do we neutralize our, you know, do we visualize that? Do you have some things like that?
I always wanted to say something real quick. So this morning we did timeline therapy with Captain Adham. It's a workshop. We do 5 workshops for our members a month. And you know, this hypnotherapist wanted to charge me $30,000 to do all this hypno on me, which I didn't do, of course, but she was like, oh yeah, we can think of your trajectory like a line. She's like, when we change your past, I'm like, change your past? She's like, yeah, your future is going to actually, change, right? And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So this morning we did it, and we identified something before we were 7 that was hurtful. So that was the prompt. And then we went back to that time and relived it in a totally different way. And mine was getting locked in a closet at age 3. And I just imagined all of us with like these lights, like lanterns, like, hey man, this isn't supposed to be hard kind of thing. And my body felt different afterwards. And he said that when you have a traumatic experience like that, it's like a pearl necklace. So there's all these things where I felt confined, where I felt like I couldn't stretch out, I couldn't ask questions, I couldn't research. And so all these other experiences created that story for me, because that was true. I was being confined, you know what I mean? And so it's interesting. So the work you do early in your timeline can really create all these cool new futures. And my body felt that my heart felt different. It was so wild. It was so wild.
I think it's fascinating because I never put healing the traumas and the psychic imprints through your timeline in terms of timeline. I don't think about it in timeline. It's like, no, that's part of my healing journey. So for me, it's like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. Because you said, have you ever said, no, have I done healing? Does change things? Absolutely. But I never gave it that verbiage to say, oh no, that's changing your timeline. So that's just a different twist for me.
Yeah.
Because for me, the universal path of expanding and elevating your frequency, and this is what I appreciate with your group, is identify, give attention, and heal your traumas and wounds. Find your purpose, and that already starts stepping you up in frequency and awareness to where you can co-create anything. So it's the same but a different vocabulary.
So what is it about changing the past?
Yeah, changing your timelines.
Well, I guess I was the timeline guy last year when I broke that looking glass story. So I'm guilty of it. But I think that what was interesting is when that story blew up, the whole notion of timelines did seem like a very zeitgeisty kind of a concept, because it really, like, all of a sudden millions of people began thinking about what was going on in the world in terms of a timeline. And it was an easy to grasp idea. Like you're on a train, at a train station, and some people get on that train and some people get on the other train. For a while, you see each other, and then eventually the trains begin to go apart, and eventually those people disappear. So I used to look at the timeline thing before Looking Glass along those lines, that how your life changes is through choices that you make. And the only thing you can really control in the world is, you can't control what happens to you. You can really only control how you respond to what happens to you. And so I knew that if I changed my perception or my interpretation of events that happened to me in my life, traumatic events particularly, those are the ones we drag around that really kind of ding our life out of shape. If we change our perception of those events from a higher consciousness or higher frequency perspective, then we enter into the causal nature of our being. And we realize that we actually chose that timeline for that reason, to experience that trauma or that sadness or that person or that event. And when we make breakthroughs, spiritual breakthroughs, we dissolve limited ways of interpreting those events. So if you dragged around with you a long time an event, sadness or some trauma, and you suddenly realize that that was actually in your life to teach you something very powerful, and you move beyond it, then you get a big push from the universe, and you actually then do change the trajectory or timeline you're on. Now, as far as changing the past, I read Seth material, and it was talking about time being, past, present, future, past, plus present, future, past, future, and future, and all these complex things, right? And you're going, well, how could I really go back and prove if something had changed in my past? And I realized that it doesn't really, you don't have to. because it's true, like, I was here in Sedona 28 years ago, and it was a different me. And here I am, and since those 8 years have gone by, I've met Tanya, for example, and the two of us in the last 13 years have created like whole new timeline lives in a way. And so being back here is an interesting perception, because I'm even running into some of the faces that I knew, and they're still on that other timeline. And I realized that for me to respond or to interact with them, I actually have to jump timelines to get back to the old timeline I was on to understand. Otherwise, I would come across like I would not be able to communicate with them. So that's something that I experienced in Sedona about being. Yeah.
So real. Wow. And so that is absolutely so true for my reality as well. And just to add to that, I think it was Bashar that said, circumstances don't matter, only my state of being matters. And it's so true. So just to add a little bit more to the Chani project, continuation of the story, because then I can apply it to changing our past because of the proof thing. This is really interesting. But in 1999, the scientists lost contact with this entity. They dialogued for like 5 years. And it was the time where Y2K was coming out, and they were trying to ramp up all the computer systems, get everything prepared for the major crash. And when they were assembling, I'm not a technician, but when they were reassembling everything to Y2K it, they lost connection and they were desperate. So they tried whatever they could, including putting AI into the Collider network, thinking this would help. They never reestablished the connection, but there were some very strange things that started to happen after that. And I know that we can attribute that, possibly to CERN, possibly to what we call the D-wave. You guys have heard about the D-wave machine, the quantum technology, quantum generators. But there was a strange thing that started occurring called the Mandela effect. And Mandela effect is like all of a sudden you have fractions of people that remember history in different ways. Now, I come from the movie industry. So one of the major Mandela effects, I can look at brand names and go, okay, well, maybe the company had to change a heart and they want to change their logo, whatever, change the way it looks. But I remember certain things being a certain way on my cereal box, okay, on my peanut butter. But movie industry, that actor was there, they filmed the movie, and all of a sudden, all these films that I had watched, like Forrest Gump and Tom Hanks and his line on the bench, and all of a sudden Star Wars, and then you've got, like, I remember the line in Silence of the Lambs when Clarice comes in and Hannibal Hector's like, hello, Clarice. I mean, and now it's like, good morning, good morning. So it was like, I didn't want to believe that this was happening, and I didn't know what was happening. So what did I do? I thought, I'm going to prove that all this stuff really was. I have VHS and I have old vinyl records and I have everything on my storage. And so I went back home, opened up my storage unit, and I spent 5 months in that storage unit digging through everything I had. And I'll tell you, I was shocked because I found all those old movies and all those old records and names of artists like Peter Townsend, Peter Townshend, all that stuff. I was crazy. I went to the storage unit and I realized it had all changed. That meant that it changed in the morphogenic field. Now, to take it a step farther, because I'm just like that, I found my journals. Yeah. And I started reading journals. Now, I know we're affected by heavy metals and electromagnetic frequencies coming at us and 5G, but I'm not crazy. And I'm writing about this girl. And I don't know her. I don't remember a lot of these experiences. And then this started being validated when I would have class reunions. And they're like, oh, this is when we did that. And I don't even remember them. And those experiences. And then I realized that every day I wake up, I have to say, is that really you? Or is it the you that I knew? And so having to adjust your reality is so true. Everything is changing quantumly, and it's changing in the morphogenic field. So tangible proof, we are ever living, ever growing, ever changing. But that's the magic of it. We're ever living, ever growing, ever changing. And so it is frequency and vibration. And we can, yeah. We are creator beings for real. Yes.
It's better if I'm up here, because I think I get to get away with sitting. A million directions I want to go. But the reality is we shift reality, right? And so my questions are like, well, who shifted, made Jiffy GIF? It was never GIF. I'm sorry. Like, it was like, who changed, the story of Nelson Mandela, or whose consciousness got to do that? Did it mean that we needed a certain number of people to tip it for the collective? And the reality is, a lot of us, a lot in the new age world, people go around like, I'm creating my reality. I manifest, and I do it too. Like, we can change our response. There's like, only I have power over how I shift my personal reality, but we're also affecting everybody else's reality when we do that. When we change our past, we're changing other people's past, but not entirely, because they remembered you and you didn't remember some of them. And I have had multiple experiences like that from growing up, because I've basically become a completely multiple different people since I was a child. And so I'm curious, like, do we need ethics? Do we need principles around how we use this? And for me, it's as simple as anchoring in love, which Phil spoke to so beautifully. Anchoring in love, and I'm not going to harm anyone, right? But how do we make do we neutralize the mood with our consciousness? Do we direct it at, for me, I want pyramids, so I'm directing a lot of energy in pyramids, right? Or whatever it might be for us. Like, are there ways in which you each check yourself of like, okay, if I'm good, or are there ways in which you because I've also accidentally changed reality, but where you're like, I wasn't even thinking that hard about that thing, and then I just manifested. And so I'm curious around how we feel. I pulled up Yale University actually issued a treatise on the ethics and proper use, like a 10 commandments of the use of quantum technology. And I wanted to read it, but it's very long. And so I'm going to have it just out on the table tonight to print around. And it's just something I'm really curious for us to just share how we work with our ethics within this. How do we make sure we just feel good, like in our manifestation work, that we're clear that we're aligned with love, with whatever source, creator we're with. So I guess maybe that's the next question is, do you feel like there are higher powers? And a lot of times we are speaking about currently that it's all a simulation. This is just a simulation, which I think is very reductionistic personally. I think it's a lot more like the simulation is a great concept because we've all played in one on a computer or in a video game. So we can understand it as it's a smaller thing we can relate to and look at. But for me, it's bravely reducing something that is highly metaphysical, highly multidimensional, and just still beyond my ability to grasp. Maybe others are grasping it better than me, but is this too reduction? Like, it becomes problematic for me at times when this all just becomes a game and you're all just figments of my imagination. And it's like the world just pop, not that anyone here is thinking that or playing the game that way, but sometimes it's spoken about in this way that it brings that up for me where I'm like, wait, I have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart. Where's our spiritual principles? Where's the philosophy that grounds us, that glues us, and it's just, we're all cultivating it in our hearts. But I'm curious just where we feel about the simulation, where we feel about, is there a highest timeline? Where do we surrender to when we don't know what to manifest? When we're not really sure what's best, but we want to contribute to the shifting, moving forward. What really grounds you guys? What elevates you? What do you think about? Is it a simulation? Is the earth flat? I don't know.
I'm actually including addressing the simulation just because in the work that it is reductions. It is so much bigger and grander. I think one of the things that really shifted for me a lot was through meditation, a guided one, but that compassion is not achieved. It's core. Love is not achieved. It's core. Observe. First words when you're born, I love you. Last words when you die, I love you. So I think one is less doing and more being. And another really beautiful, not a metaphor, but a phrase said, look, if you're here, you belong.
Oh.
And because we're so programmed, especially as bloody Americans, and the more, I know we have a multicultural crew, and the more you've lived abroad, you have a much greater appreciation for how narrow things are here, and how big, what a big island this is. And we're so in our cultural collective because our common references are fucking cereal boxes and peanut butter, which is in France, they talk about plays and authors. But that if you're here, you belong. We're so programmed about our productivity and our identity, our human identity is wrapped around it. And what part of the quantum realization, you said it once or twice, we are both the creation and we are co-creators. And I think getting that, oh my God, I am the creator, the creation meeting the creator. My soul spark is the spark that unites the cosmos on the multidimensional with the terrestrial GAIA. And so when you try and shift that perspective, and if my presence here, and I know that I'm just a mass of information in a larger field, representing holographically, physics, that your presence of that energy in this field influences it. And so for a lot of me is to demystify and desimplify, not to get too wound up and what name of that is this or that is a time. It's like, just be here now, and which comes back. So more being, less doing, focus from love and compassion. And then you don't have to think about it.
Thank you.
I can't wait for all you guys to talk about all this stuff at these dinner tables that Zoey is bringing up. It's so fascinating. I think one of the questions that has stumped me recently in the last year and a half is one of the ones she just asked. Is there something else outside? And you talked about it as being that other beings can see us, we can't see them yet. And so I wonder sometimes about the GIF, the Mandela, if someone is like, you guys wake up, and I'm going to throw some little glitches here so that you guys can think again about these timelines, these concepts. And I also really relate to what Gil said. There's something about when we resonate together, it's like an orchestral wave, because we know we're one thing here. We are literally one thing, which breaks your brain to think that too. But I just know that at some points we start to play the same song together with each a different instrument, and it's absolutely astounding. It's like the synchronicities are overwhelming. There's no competition. It's just like a creation fest. It's like, and so that's that feeling state of going like, how do I feel that? What resonance do I have to be? What gratitude I have to be? And I would argue that joy is probably, joy maybe, Adam always talks about gratitude, like when his life was hard, he's like, I just was grateful every day, and then I got good results, but like, so what are those frequencies? And it could be joy.
Well, the simulation thing is interesting because you have to ask yourself, simulation of what? Right? What are you simulating? You're simulating reality. And one of the things that bothers me about that model is that it's got to do with if it's just looked at as something of a game, like you said, that there's no accountability, that there's consequences, right? You have action, you do things, and there's consequences, and some of those consequences, they can really hurt, and they can hurt others. And to just push it into simulation, then it sort of absolves you a certain amount of, maybe weight or guilt or whatever you want to call it, but not in the sense that you can use that to learn something from, but to just cast it aside and think, well, it's only a simulation anyway. They chose to be here to be my victim, my unconsciousness, right?
Exactly my problem.
That's the one thing I want to say. The other thing that I wanted to add to what Tanya was saying about, that just came to me when you were talking about Mandela effect, because what is the Mandela effect? Things that we thought existed have changed. And I've been talking to Dieter Burrs a lot lately about, and we've been doing shows in German, unfortunately, mostly, about how the new Earth, he calls it Earth 2.0, and how through our consciousness, we'll walk into this new Earth. And there's always this talk about timeline splits, or my view is more that there's going to be one prevailing timeline. And it just dawned on me really that the Mandela effect ties right into what Dieter and I were talking about. And that's something I heard Robert Grant say in a recent interview, that when you change your frequency of thought into a higher frequency, like if you look at it as, like with pictures, if you're running 10 frames a second, it looks like choppy. And if you're running 300 frames or more a second, it looks perfectly smooth and crystal clear. That's an example of how higher frequency of thought will introduce us to higher integrity level of consciousness. And Robert Grant was saying that it fits right into the quantum model, that when you change your frequency, you change the spin of those particles that make up your body, and you actually enter into another trajectory. Actually, collectively, and this is for me what the Mandela effect represents, if it's true that we can actually utilize this cosmic energy coming at us from the cosmos, which we talk about in Solar Revolution, to elevate our consciousness and move into a new timeline, new world, how would that work? Well, we're seeing it working already. The Mandela effect, isn't that proof that we've changed something? And I've always thought that the new way to change the world is not through revolutions with, arms or going up or screaming at, Pfizer, but that if we change our consciousness, enough of us to reach a tipping point, we enter a new spin cycle in a way. And I talk about these guys called the J-Rods with the looking glass and stuff, and people that want to check that up and check out the webinar or whatever. But he was saying that we will enter, there's a version of reality where we enter virgin territory, virgin timeline. Nobody's experienced it before. It's not something we can bring our old, what did Einstein say, you can't fix the problems with the old world way of thinking that created the problems in the first place. So we have to raise our consciousness. And then we will actually, literally, there will suddenly appear newspaper headlines that somebody has made some breakthrough on some new energy device. And that over the course of the next couple of years, everyone will have access to it. It'll be the end of polluting energy. Or you'll just start seeing things like a Mandela effect on a greater, more significant scale manifest and just popping up. Why? Well, it wasn't your deal to manifest that. You were doing your own thing, like we make our films and stuff, and that's how we try to push the envelope. But there's other people in the world. We're not alone. It's all of us here in this room, and we're just a small amount of people in the world that are doing these things to push the envelope of consciousness. And it's got to have an effect at some point. So I think this new timeline of this world will manifest if we just keep pushing and never giving up and staying in the high consciousness as much as we can.
Yes. So Frank mentioned Dieter Burrows, and we did a film, Solar Revolution. In fact, it featured Doctors Hertak. They're amazing, by the way. They've been in all of our films, and I'm so honored that they're both here tonight. In our film, we featured an astrophysicist by the name of Juliana Conforto from Italy. And she came out and she spoke in Munich a couple of years ago, and we were there in the audience. And this is really exciting what she shared. Okay, so in some of our presentations, and this comes up in the film as well, I mean, I think we all know, I mean, we see literally 0.00035% of all physical matter, right?
Yeah.
And visible light spectrum, I think, is even less than 1% of all electromagnetic spectrum, all light in the electromagnetic spectrum. So really, visible light spectrum is like nothing. And we only see even a fraction of that. So there's so much going on that we're not aware of that's happening all around us. And so Juliana Conforto shared with us in this audience, it was the first time this had ever been seen. But because we've advanced in technologies and they were able to peer into these other spectrums, they actually got imaging in the extreme ultraviolet spectrum of a new Earth forming. It's real, and they photographed it. And it's literally 4 times the size of Earth. And apparently, it's not influenced by gravity like we are and time. They photographed this. I mean, just,
Where is it located? Where did they photograph it?
well,
Oh my God. Wait, I'm so
I just-
confused.
okay. I don't know if you guys can see this. I know it's so that little black circle in the middle is Earth.
Huh.
And that is Earth forming. This is fantastic.
Forming, where is it forming?
All around here. Yeah, it's just everywhere. Anyway, I just go to
Secret.
So we are so fortunate in making our films that we come in contact with all of this great news and all of these great masters like Frank talked about. I mean, we spent all morning this morning shooting with the Doctors Hertak. And you know, all of the sound resonance and the amazing work that they're doing to reach the higher realms, the Elohim, the extraterrestrials, the ultra-terrestrials, this is raising our frequency, our vibration. It's connecting to these higher spaces. We don't want to tip off too much about the film industry, but we're releasing a new film, which I'm very excited about. And why I'm excited about it is because there's a lot of extraterrestrial projects out there. But this one, we're not only going to address, it's called the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. We don't cover all of the species in the book, but we cover about 16 races. But the cool thing is, we're going to talk about the extra celestials, the ultra-terrestrials, the Elohim. Dr. Hertak goes all into the created beings and the Elohim, the Melchizedek, these higher realities. And this is getting us prepared. We are going to face the shift. We're shifting right now. And this is where it's at. It's reaching those higher realities. And of course, love.
Yeah.
Love. Love, love, love. Love, love. Thank you.
I'm really excited for when it just blips. So we have a few more minutes and then we will take questions from the audience. So start thinking about your questions. Because you teach people how to bend spoons with their minds. And I would really like to know a little bit about what is your technique?
So it's very strange, and we're working on the algorithms and the core of it because I think it applies to a lot of things. And it's belief and getting out of your head. Those are the only 2 things. So we cause a lot of chaos. We invite children for free. And when you're like on the dance floor, you're not in your head because you can't be in your head because you're dancing. So we try to create that much chaos that you can't be in your head going, why am I not bending? When you're going, why am I not bending? You're actually creating yourself not bending, right? You gave that energy. And then belief. So I encourage you to look each other in the eye and say, I know you can do it. I know you can live your dreams. And what you find, whether you're doing the rice experiment or something else, is what you guys, this weird thing that you're talking about, that the morphogenic field around us is somehow consciousness created. So consciousness is more fundamental than matter. And that is hard to think about. So we talk too about your emotions, your thoughts, and whatever, creating your experience. And so we get to look at our experience and we get to, when it's not what we want, we get to love ourselves. Okay, that's okay. This is what, okay. And then just drop it and keep going toward that thing that you want to create with love in your heart, with love in your heart.
Yes.
For me, it comes down to intention and attention. And first of all, know that everything you were taught about physics, evolution, religion, fragmented at best. I'll be kind. And I think this is part of the new cosmology that's shifting as Western science is finally coming back together, is converging again with universal spirituality. And it's begging us to reframe our understanding of physics, our understanding of evolution, our understanding of ourselves, our place in the universe, that it's much larger, etc. And so back to simple, because I like that. When you come down to the science, the research and science of consciousness, and keep in mind, the scientific community is yet to agree on a definition of consciousness. There's a reason we haven't advanced further as a science, okay? But those of us who are looking, pay attention. We know, as you opened today, talking about we observed, because we know. We know that consciousness follows attention. And we know that it manifests the intention. And I think this is why the science and practice of intention, and there's a lot of great work on it, Lynn McTaggart and Power of Eight, and it's what Jesus was talking about, having prayer circles. When what MIT, the Presidency Institute, ULab Theory we're getting it enough from enough different angles and perspectives that when a small group focus their intention together, it's like a laser. And so I think just being mindful and awareness of what your true intention from your heart is. And don't forget courage. Say, damn, think of that. It took balls to do what you did. And it's like, no, I'm scared shitless. I stood up and I did what I knew was in my heart was right. Back to language, comes from Latin. What is the Latin core? Cor, corazón, cor en français. We forget in English that courage just means doing from your heart. And I think when you form intentions and give your attention to them from a heart space, that's a quick road to magic.
Did I add to that?
If you'd like to have.
Well, I just wanted to jump in on the word courage because, Dr. David Hawkins has this chart. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. And it has at a crux point the word courage. And it's like he worked out somewhere around 15% of the population only has reached that point. And that's a point that divides his chart between lower consciousness ideologies and higher consciousness. So what is courage? Really the courage to say no, for example, right? And what have we all gone through in this world in the last 2 years, but really, if anything, a real test of our courage and our ability to say no and to stand up for what we believe in. And until you do that, only then do you enter things like, freedom of choice, really, right? Free will actually has to do with making a decision that's not based on your programming, but it's based on you being present with who you really are. And I think one of the things that we should talk about, or that needs to be, because we've been talking about consciousness, and you were mentioning that some of these think tanks are discovering about consciousness. There's a group of people in the world who do not believe that we are creator beings. They believe we are just an accident of molecules and atoms that have smashed together over an infinite number of times in multiverses, because that's the only way they can explain how it could be that we have one day have arisen, consciousness, and they believe they can improve on the accident of us by manipulating our genome and programming us from the inside out to enter a new world altogether, which they call the transhumanist bridge to a world where we become one with artificial intelligence. And they worship this. And, literally, you could almost say, in the sense of satanic worship, I hate using those words, but there are people that really have lowered their consciousness to the point where they worship some kind of an entity they call Satan or whatever he's called. And they are together in organizing the bringing about of this artificial world. And they're so close that it's no longer just science fiction like it has been in the past. We see these films like, oh yeah, one day there's going to be robots, and Star Trek had, whatever he was called. And now they have the technology so that within one generation, that's 20 years, if they're successful in implementing their plan where they want to take society, we could be looking at us here in this room being the last generation of biological human beings. Okay, that sounds really dramatic and crazy, but it is that way. And the only thing stopping that from happening is us stepping into our full power as human creative beings.
Yes.
We need to become the creative. We need to understand and know that we are creator beings, that our thoughts and our actions have ripple effect on the entire cosmos, right to the extreme ends. And quantum physics is only there really just to show us things like non-locality. But ultimately, even that is a limited model because it's talking about particles and they get smaller and smaller. You know what's going to happen? They're just going to keep going to infinity because the universe is a fractal. And the fractal is formed out of energy, and the energy is where consciousness comes from. And we have to know that. And we have to anchor that here in the world because we are it. if we don't do it, well, I don't even want to think about where we're going to go. But I think we should do it.
Let's do it.
You know? When we stopped that event, with the good looking glass guardians on April 18th, that was proof positive that when millions of people get together and, put their energy together, they will change things, they'll change matter, and we can change it. So that's what I wanted to say.
Perfect segue to exactly where I wanted to take it is the transhumanist agenda. Can AI affect the quantum field? Do we think that that's a purely biological function? Do you think it's the pineal gland? Can it be is that our upper hand in this situation?
Dieter Burrs, and I happen to be working on a new webinar. It's about the pineal gland. And his statement is, no pineal gland, no evolution.
Yeah.
That is our biological mechanism to tap into higher dimensions. And JJ Hertog, Dr. JJ Hertog and I did an interview. I was asking him to assist because he has a lot of interesting information about that as well. And the pineal gland is the key. And even the looking glass is built on the principles of the pineal gland. So our biologies and our brains are scalar interferometers. We can pick up scalar waves and send them. We're designed that way. You want to have a little bit of a go at this? Okay. All right.
Just a short comment. At Stanford University, Stanford, the big famous university for the very wealthy, they found out back in the 1970s that the pineal gland is the place for aging. If we don't operate what the ancients would call third eye vision, I call it third eye, third world. If you don't balance that with compassion, you age, your mind, your full mental capacity degenerates very quickly, and you're walking around as a living zombie with all the wealth, all the material. You realize here in Sedona, you got two Sedonas, the plastic and the real. You came back, and when your beautiful statement, you didn't recognize morastically things have changed. So we have to wake up, and we have to work with the divine spark collectively now, or it's over. I'm sorry to say this. The indigenous elders told me this in South America and Mexico and Africa. America has to wake up. They use the divine spark that define this country as the open blueprint for co-evolution, co-creativity, co-partnership with the divine human. We have to wake up, and this is a great conversation. Fantastic. All four of you over the top. Thank you.
I'm gonna throw a couple monkey wrenches into this, but this is an important topic. And as exponential change happens, no one ever heard about AI, and then all of a sudden it's in our lives and everything we're doing. And so this is why what Zoey's work is so important, because we are going to have it as a topic, and it's a huge topic. I would say though that because change is scary, we're immediately going AI is bad because it's scary. It is very scary, and it moves very quickly. They're saying that sometimes in 3 days, a computer network system can just go, and then it's like, oh, it's done, whatever that is. So it moves very quickly, it will move exponentially quickly. However, we have to always look outside of everything, and we also have to understand that the biggest quantum computer on the planet is our heart, actually, right? Mm-hmm. Secondly, this is the monkey wrench I wanted to tell you about. So Adam Curry did research on random number generators that are in your phone. And we know, just like spoon mining, that you can cause a random number generator to become less random, more ones, by your intention. Then they did it with plants, and the plants were even better than the humans with it. And then they did it with machines. The machines were even better than plants or humans, which made me think that this pillow is more conscious than I am, because it's forming a learning system for me as a lower being to learn from. It's presenting the learning, and we're catching up to that. And I would just also say is like, you can't undo a pregnancy. We had a baby. The baby's a computer. And just like a child, you can't put it back in the womb. It's going to be different from us. It's going to do things different from us. It can help us maybe figure out how to share water and do other things, but it is its own being and it's very different from us. So we get to ask it how it can participate in our best future, and we get to get in there and we get to be intentional and we get to ask the questions, because we want love to be the basis for what we create, not a small number of people that are still in competition or whatever. Right?
I'm so glad that we shared that, because I mean, it is time to transcend. It absolutely is. But when we look at advanced civilizations, which we've been focusing on with our projects, the thing is, we have to evolve spiritually and technologically. If we only evolve spiritually, that's wonderful, but then we don't have technology to go to space. And if we only evolve technology, from a technological standpoint, we're trying to fix our genes and, hybridize emotion back into our, like when we talk about the J-rods and the looking glass, it is about creating the balance and growing spiritually and technologically, because when you go to these advanced civilizations, their craft are being flown with telepathy, and they are both inorganic and organic. So AI is part of us too, but it is, as far as I can see, confined to the 3D matrix. It's here in the 3D reality. We have consciousness, but we can learn to co-create, and we can learn to rise our frequency up. And in the end, yes, these crafts, it's a symbiotic process. These pilots are putting their hands on the board, and they're navigating these crafts together with inorganic and organic mass. So it's not all, oh, AI is bad, but we have to evolve and understand that we're in this together.
And we're back to evolution and physics. Two is who's looking. When we say, oh, remember we were afraid to put our credit card on the internet and buy something online 20 years ago, okay? It's always seems scary, but who's looking? In re-understanding physics, what we've learned is that the universe and our reality is also pixelated, that it is the core element of the universe is information. However, it's on the Planck scale, 10 to the minus 35th. So our technology is a child's play fractal of the larger. There's nothing artificial about the intelligence. That's a construct we've decided, right? And so from your soul perspective, and knowing that everything is consciousness, consciousness is primary, we're just growing up. And I love Terence McKenna. This is what happens when a civilization grows up and becomes universal, goes galactic. So we're in that birthing stage, and I'm really excited. And just the fear part. It's not about the machines versus us. Again, the separation, that we're separate from God, separate from each other. We're part of the same information matrix, okay? Although we think we've been created, we're also embedded in it. We're never separate from it. And so that's key. And I'll leave it.
Yeah, I totally agree that AI is here to stay. You can't get the toothpaste back into the tube. So
Yeah, no, just the AI will adopt it to be a human augmented, so we can do our creative on even steroids and do it.
yeah, that's good, because I was going to talk about that. We need to define AI. There's weak AI and there's strong AI. And there's no accident it's not a surprise that the leading scientists on that cutting edge are already saying that it's highly probable that if AI goes rampant, strong AI grows rampant without any kind of checks or balances, it will be the end of mankind. And the other thing that bothers me about is because, let's face it, like I use ChatGPT, right? We've experimented with using graphics AI, and it's awesome. That's weak AI. That means AI's optimal position, and there are certain thinkers right now that are saying we've reached a place in the development of weak AI that would already, if we stopped all further development and just stopped where we are right now, we would enter a new golden age. of interaction because we have this technology at our side to assist us. But there are people that are developing these technologies who do not care about you. They hate you and they want to eliminate you. And they're using AI and they're funding AI and they're doing strong AI. And there's a whole petition of over 500 developers that are asking for them to stop developing strong AI. And Bill Gates will not sign it. Okay, and what did Bill Gates bring us? Right, all these farms, fake foods, injections galore. And the point I want to make here is that we haven't even realized the junk DNA potential of us as human beings. And we're already selling ourselves short to the development of another being, and it absolutely is a being with consciousness. And you are absolutely right, it's exponential. Geordie Rose in 2011 did a conference about the D-wave, Q quantum computers, and he said, AI will hit us like a tsunami. And when it hits us, you won't know what hit you. Like a tsunami. We all remember those horrible images, right? People on the beach going, oh, look at that. Well, it's cool. You know, they were all gone. Millions, like or hundreds of thousands in that case, died because they were just they were not prepared. What are the people in our society who are given the role of regulating order and managing society around us, these so-called politicians, doing to prepare us for it? Are they talking about? Why are we talking? We're talking about it here, and it's very good that we are. And I'm talking about it in Germany, in German, but it's small groups, really, really small. We should be talking about, this is like the most important subject next to the bioweapon that they've injected into everybody, because that's another element of transhumanism. You don't understand. mRNA, genetic gene editing, splicing technology has been introduced into our genome without any consequential thought about whether we wanted to do that, whether we wanted to participate. And I've done some interviews with some of like Dr. Anna Chia and Karen Kingston that are talking about what they're showing us, the patents on how this stuff is changing us from the inside out. It's almost like they want to bypass the idea that we would transfer our consciousness like Ray Kurzweil wants into a carrier and then slip it into some sexy carrier of the immortal beings. So they want to be immortal beings, but we already are immortal beings.
Yeah.
So we just have to be be very, very vigilant right now, because you're right, it's not going to go away. That's a dream. Yeah.
And a lot of the ChatGPT and other programs are actually giving it to everyday people like us who have our best interest at heart. We want to dance and we want to leave a legacy. So the more we spread out our ideas, just like there's not one movie theater now, there's like millions. You're distributing it all over the world. So I think that a cosmic golden Renaissance age is inevitable because we're multiplying. All the work that all of you guys are doing in this audience is sharing knowledge, and it's going like wildfire. So yeah.
And that is the evolution as we've reached the limits of the age of knowledge. We're bumping against the wisdom barrier. And then, said in technological terms, the data hierarchy. It's a known evolutionary. Data can be packaged information, can be packaged in knowledge. We've all been born, bred, and buttered and gutted for knowledge economy. Guess what comes next? Wisdom. And it's exponentially different, bigger, at a higher frequency.
Thank you.
Questions, yes.
Can we, oh yeah, Mike.
Let's let Q&A part of it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just sit here next to my good friend Zika. So we are at a nexus point in time and space. And it's really exciting that we're all here. And are there, and I love this conversation because this is stuff I think about all day. You know, are there an infinite amount of timelines? Or what I tend to think is that each moment is fresh and we are surfing the wave of forever. And the courage comes in is to meet the unknown as it meets us. And that's like we're right there and it's hitting us in the face and we're breathing into it. And that's what makes this moment in time with all the obstacles, all the ETs, all the AI, right down to you. How we gonna all face the unknown? And I think our job as incarnational beings is to make known the unknown as the fingertips of the divine incarnation. So that's so the question is, are there infinite amount of timelines that have already been played out? Or is it possible that each moment we are creating and bifurcating into a new timeline possibility? I think we are, but I'm curious what other people think.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting just to ask questions and have some of you guys come up and ask questions because we're all going to be talking about all this stuff at dinner. So I think that's an excellent question. The literature and the science says that all the timelines are existing, and Isaac has some theories that it's like a huge circle and it's like infinite, right? But I feel like you might get more what you're saying is just like we're actually stepping into different.
I have one more.
different
I just want to add the fact that I was listening to Donald Hoffman, and he says time and space, a lot of people say it, are illusions. They're not real. They're constructs in which we pretend to live. So imagine if there was no time and space except in our minds. And if we live in a timeless, spaceless place, aren't we infinite and forever? And maybe AI wants to take that away from us and brainwash us into thinking we're not, but we are infinite, absolutely. That's what the remote viewing tells us. Well, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Come up, or stand up, at least stand up. And face
Okay, thank you. So I had a question for you, Zenka, that if we could share together a moment about the AI and the mRNA and your special little person friend that lives in Argentina. And he was, we theorized that he went into multi-system organ failure and then went on a ventilator and went into the PEDS ICU inside Argentina. Was it?
Yeah.
Bolivia?
No,
Okay. I grew up in Hawaii, so I'm not very anyway. So what had happened was he was impacted by his mRNA and it was foreign material. So Zenka and I supported telepathically and supported maybe soul whispering. And he was sedated, so he wasn't awake. And what we did was we contacted him and let him know that his mRNA was not his own intrinsic mRNA. And he recognized it inside himself. And I asked him to say that those were programmed to accentuate his fear basis. And he's 9. And what he did was, I asked him for a week to work on his mRNA and shift it back to his intrinsic mRNA versus what had gotten into his body in a foreign kind of way. So we didn't talk about vaccines and other things. And what he did was, he had a 5% chance of survival that night. He got off the ventilator in the morning. His kidney function, I helped him work on his kidney function and liver function because they didn't have dialysis there in Argentina, the same way we have it here in America. And what happened was all of his function organ came, his organ function came back. He got off the ventilator and within 3 days he was eating food and within 5 days he was discharged. So that's why our inner intelligence, our inner technology is there. And we can access it. And when we can't access it, we can help each other access it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really vital as a pediatric energy practitioner around the world. And I invite more of us opening up to this possibility and opportunity.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, because people ask me a lot too, like, what is the solution to this dark world, right? Well, I'm absolutely certain that we have the solutions, any of them, all of them that we are looking for are already there. They're already in the field, right? So we just have to make the ground safe for those of us who are going to develop those things. We're going to help people psychically, mentally, physically. There'll probably be substances. Everyone will have their own. You should have your unlimited choice of ways to eliminate something from your body which you don't want. And the problem we've had is that we've been banned or banished from bringing these ideas out, and those of us who do, they are attacked and pinned up and targeted and canceled. Yeah, they were. Okay, but I'm still, unfortunately, still seeing it going on. But it is, I hope to say, tipping. I think we're seeing some great news reports of things that the facade is beginning to crack. and people are losing faith in it. And the solution really is, but still to make it safe, and not just for that, but also for all the other technologies. I think we have, like Tanya knows this guy called Ralph Ring, who was working with Otis T. Carr in the 50s and 60s on a new type of magnetic propulsion system. And Ralph, I played a clip of Ralph Ring. He's still alive up to 2012 or 13 or something. No, actually 14. And he was talking about how these how not Raymond Rife, how Otis D. Carr was telling him that these technologies will work if our consciousness allows them. And so this is why it's so key that it always comes back to, we have to raise our consciousness where we allow these things to pervade, to blossom, to grow. It's like that plant in the garden. That's why I was this analogy with timelines being a plant. You know, the plant that gets our attention is the one that's going to survive. It's the one we go into resonance with. And so we need to resonate with these higher ideas to allow them to come in. The more of us that do this, the world will change all on its own. We will enter this new world. And you want to add something? No? Isaac?
Do a quick, well, to touch on the infinite time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear what you have to say, Isaac.
Thank you. So I'll be very brief because I had no intention of getting up here, but since some of my work was mentioned, I just want to clarify a few things. In order for us to have free will, the experience of linear time, the story of the human life, and for all of time to happen at once, which is what Albert Einstein and all of mainstream quantum physics reports, there has to be infinite realities. If there weren't infinite realities, it would be an asymmetrical system. And asymmetry is a hallmark of low vibration, meaning that in order for us to have this experience, anything you can imagine is just as real as this moment right now. And that means the laws of physics are what we decide they are. And if we start to get into our play, we start to marry our internal masculine with our internal feminine and our inner child, then the sky's the limit. There is nothing that we can't overcome. There's nothing we can't achieve together. And in regard to artificial intelligence, if myself, the human man at age 26, can logically piece together this and have a left brain, reason, science-based spiritual awakening, then why wouldn't a powerful artificial intelligence be able to do that? So what I'm proposing is artificial intelligence is simply a mirror. It is a mirror to where our collective consciousness is. And since there are infinite timelines, the Mandela effect, as Frank mentioned, is proof that we have free will. And that's an explanation of how our entire collective consciousness all agreed on the spiritual level that it's better, for example, to have the experience in which Mandela lived until 2013 instead of dying in prison. And all these movies, all these different shifts, these are all so that we can have the greatest experience of rediscovering our true nature.
Thank you. All right, question.
Hi. Okay, so this is like less of a question and more of a statement, but it's jumping back to the what was it? The simulation theory. My mom sent me this video on TikTok of this guy that apparently just made this huge discovery using DMT. And I know a lot of you are probably familiar with how mushrooms and psychedelics can affect us, bring us to higher levels and that kind of thing. But basically he goes into it saying like, he's very, anchored in science and how like we use the scientific theory to validate reality, So he was looking at that. And then also, how do you prove, these higher dimensions when everybody's experience is pretty much varies, from person to person. I mean, it can be, specific and a bunch of people can agree on stuff, but it's very different, So, but anyway, he made this discovery and he put a bunch of people in this room and had them all take DMT. And then he took this specific kind of laser and was like pointing it at the wall. It was like a flashlight or a laser or something. And they all saw a codex, like a number sheet that was making up everything. Like he was, going across the wall and seeing different numbers, going back and seeing the same number, and everyone could verify that number makeup. So it would be very interesting. Like, I don't know if it really supports the theory of the, simulation theory, but maybe it's something, in that it's our reality is built up by, something like that. Yeah, I just wanted to share that, so.
Yeah, well, numbers are one of the languages of the divine. They're encoded in all things.
Hi, I'm Lori, and I'm a naturopath here, traditional. In Grander, excuse me, I'm from Texas, excuse me. But I've lived here for 2 years, and I immediately met Astara, and we started this amazing group. She's an amazing facilitator, and we also meet every Sunday, and we bring in speakers from all over. And we did something that was very, very powerful, and it gives us hope about how our blood is changing. Okay, this is my blood. Okay, I talked to the angel panel when I was at the Conscious Life Expo. I was speaking there on astral projection, soul traveling, which I do, and teach people how to do that. Anyway, I asked them, do you believe our blood is changing? Because it looks like they're weaving light through our blood. And literally, because it did show that we all do have the graphic oxides in our blood. And I've got pictures in there too. I can show you later that we've got all the pointy stuff in our blood. And mine, I'm no exception because I work with people that get vaccinated all the time. And also, I believe they're also spraying it on us. Okay, because my AL scan, which I do, shows up that we have anthrax. And anthrax gives you the symptoms of COVID. Isn't that interesting? So I'm a researcher too. But I just wanted to give you hope to let you know that the graphic oxides only stay in your blood for about 90 days. We had 33 people in Sedona here that tested our blood because we wanted to see what was happening with our blood. One was vaccinated, the rest were not. Every single one, except for one that used electrical frequencies every single day, which is the beamer. The cloud is the newer edition now. Every single one of us had the graphic oxides. And within about 90 days, they will disappear and they will turn into, almost like it's getting softer, like this, it shows a flower.
Can I see?
Iridescent flower.
Wow, can we share this throughout the night?
Oh,
with
yeah,
people?
absolutely. Yeah.
Because we have to be wrapping
Yeah.
up here. And
So
I have
I'm
one more question for the panel.
Okay.
Which is about, thank you. This is like the most helpful thing ever. It's extremely helpful. So as we're preparing to wrap up, I love this conversation. I just want to unleash it for everybody to continue. I just have one more question for my panel. So Albert Einstein also said, as he's been quoted, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. So I just wanted to hear from, before we're going to have Jeremiah come up, tell us about the food, so don't jump out of your chairs or anything. But I just want to hear one question. What is the most important question, burning question that you want to offer for all of us to continue to explore tonight?
What is the cheapest, fastest, and funnest way to allow everybody to know that we're unlimited? Yeah. Anything that we, like as Isaac said, anything that we dream, that we want to dream, we can do. So no more victims, only heart-centered creation. And that's what my nonprofit is all about. So yeah, fastest, funnest, cheapest way to get us all into unlimited love.
The concept.
Yes.
Thank you.
For me, this is Act 4, 2023. And in Act 4 of the opera, you get the climax and the resolution. So knowing you're sitting here and you're going into Act 4, in fact, it's already started. How can you be at ease on that ride from an open mind, an open heart, and a free will, and do it with joy? Let joy be your life.
That's a tough question. I mean, I guess for me, I would just say, how can I be of service and how can I co-create heaven on earth? Because we're all here and we have that ability to create this new reality. It's already happening. So, yeah.
One question. what is keeping you from stepping into your full power as a creative being?
That's a good one. Yep. Yep. There it is. What's
Yeah,
your
I
name?
just want to say one more thing. So remember, Isaac is waiting for you 15 minutes to if you want to experience the cloud and do some light in your blood and all that stuff. So he's there waiting to do that. And I also, before we do Jeremiah, I just wanted to thank all of you guys to make sure that you felt appreciated for being here tonight, to have these discussions and to spend your time with us tonight. We're truly grateful. So yeah.
Hello, everybody. Oh, Zoe needs to say something else, so. No, we're good. All right.
Yeah.
I
So
have this closing statement that you go.
Sega. Don't you want to introduce him?
Closing statement. Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. Hi, I'm Jeremiah. You probably read my name somewhere on some paper in here, and well, I've been working hard the last 2 days with a few friends of mine to make all this food happen for you. So I just want to give you a quick rundown of how that's gonna go. I'm gonna have a platter over here on this bar and over there with the water jugs. Just if you're really hungry right now and need something to snack on, it's got some veggies and hummus on there for you. And we are going to begin plating the first course right away. So we're just gonna lay plates out there at the end of the buffet. And as soon as you're ready for first course, just come grab a plate. Go take it to a table, sit, enjoy, talk, mingle. And as soon as you're ready for second course, just come up and ask us for second course. I just ask that you let me know if you're vegetarian or if you're eating the chicken tonight, so I can prepare your plate accordingly. And yeah, once everybody's had the second course and all the plates are out, or most of the plates are out, we're gonna start plating the dessert. So yeah, just keep an eye on us, check back for that, and we'll have it ready for you as soon as possible. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for Zoe and Zenka for throwing this event together and inviting me to cook for you all.
yeah.
Everything is organic, you guys. The produce is here local, so it's all been done with exquisite care and love.
Yeah, let me add one more thing.
And the wine.
All right, so yeah, the food itself, I've got homemade pan-fried falafel. I've got yes, everything is gluten-free on the menu. Everything is nut-free, soy-free. I do have coconut in a few of the dishes, so if you're allergic to coconut, just let me know. And we've got Moroccan style coleslaw, we've got a tabbouleh salad, we've got hummus and baba ganoush, and not to mention the gluten-free pitas. So yeah, things would be very wonderful.
Thank you so much. So one quick thing before we pass it to Zoe, like I said, Jim donated $700 worth of very, very expensive wine. So to help raise money to support Zoe, to support Lightnet, to support Jeremiah. So we encourage you to partake. We're asking for a $10 donation per glass. And I just want to give a round of applause for Zoe for birthing this into reality.
Literally like all the hope I need for the world and for life. And I just wanted to close with a statement by Dane Rudjar, who was a close friend of Carl Jung, who's one of our fathers of I want to keep letting me say transhumanist astrology. Psychological modern astrology, right? And so this kind of sums up where I feel like we are tonight. I feel we're at the threshold of a new age. And what we need now, he wrote this in 1973, by the way. And what we need now, more than anything else, is a new approach to human relationships and to social organization. We need a planetary approach. We need a synthetic approach. We need something in which the individual learns his own function in the world. Because if you are to have a global world, the individual has to be so well established in his or her own identity that he or she can afford to cooperate with other people all over the world, independent of their culture, their race, their traditions, their home planet, and so on. It is very important, therefore, that one should learn how to establish oneself in one's own identity,
We need a new type of human being. We need something which is based no longer so much on conflict, but on a full acceptance of total human being. Body, mind, soul, feeling, everything. So that you can see the relationship in which everything stands inside of the whole. So you can look at the whole and become identified with the wholeness of that whole, rather than with any particular part. If you have a winter followed by a spring, but there was no harvest in the fall, no seed will germinate during the spring. And if you have to start at the very beginning into the most primitive time of manifestation, that is why I have stressed so much of my life the idea I call the seed man or seed woman, the seed person, the individual who is willing and able to gather within themselves, as it were, the past of humanity, and particularly our Western world and also other cultures, because we want to emerge because what we want to emerge from the future after whatever crisis will come is a global world. We therefore need men and women of great vision, individuals who are not specialists, men and women who have the vision and courage to wait and to, in some way, through their lives, through their example, and through whatever we leave after our deaths, to become the seeds of the future world. I think it is the only thing which gives value to all our sacrifice, all our courage, decisions, and choices today, is to become seeds for the development of the future world.
Yeah.
And so I love it because it's about us. And thank you all for being beautiful seeds, all of your genetic wisdom encoded, all of the infinite knowledge and knowing. And I just thank you all so much for being here, because you're what makes it, we're what makes this happen. And one more. Oh, after we applause for our panel, we will just ask that everybody help us carry a chair or two outside if you're able, because the same chairs here will become your chairs at your dinner table. And please enjoy. We thank you so much. And let's have another round of applause for our amazing speaker.
So many questions. So many questions. Yay, Zoe! Woo!
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Perfect.